We're going live, sir. I
Going
hope
live.
you're
That
ready.
used to be a
Look, Shaun
kids
Pinner
program.
joined us.
He did. He's
I see
joined you.
Shaun Pinner has joined us to watch the program tonight.
Well, yeah. Who's taking part in this? Is it going to be me, or are we
Twilight Zone?
going to watch somebody else moan and chunt tonight?
Right. Let me see here. Trying to get our
Cheers,
live
everybody.
stream.
Nice.
Cheers, Friday. Welcome to Friday.
My Friday
Good to be on a
Beaujolais.
Friday.
Hey, look, I'm home. I'm finally home.
Nareshti. Nareshti Doma.
Dom.
Doma.
Not to be confused with Dolma.
So we got Kozak Saramai in the background.
Sounds good.
Son. He's cool. He's a very cool cat. You know, musicians here are next level. There's something very interesting about taking in the culture and the music, and more important is how it rings in with the peoples. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there we go. Finally,
so I
couldn't
got
get the
my
chatter space. There it is.
while we're talking junk before everybody comes, I have my my Kiev T-shirt. Oh, we got an echo somewhere.
I killed the echo.
Oh, that's good. So
The
this
most
is it.
incredible InformNapalm is here. If y'all don't know.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
it, yeah. We're
Always been
prestigious
your
guests. Prestigious
Well,
guests on today. Better be on our best
12,
behavior.
12 years. We'll talk about that tonight. 12 years of awesome. And, you know, it's good to verbalize it instead of typing it sometimes. Years ago, when we had like baby online recon groups, you know, where we would go look for ISIS and shit, you know, it wasn't like we had an organization that easily did this. You had to have people who were weird and had odd behaviors.
Yeah.
And
Combat nerds.
right, obsessive compulsive disorder people. And on this side of the sphere, when someone would say advanced propaganda, I would always say, no, you had to look at Russian nation state versus ISIS. ISIS is 4K in the desert. And, you know, Russia has full news services and an entire wing of operation dedicated to propaganda.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's only so many people fighting back. Well, for instance, like InformNapalm. And it's always been a small but important group that has substantially exposed for many years different aspects of the Russian war machine, from like spotting the gear when Russia was lying that it was here or not here, to harvesting the communications showing the hybrid warfare trying to take over the East, you know, through the Surkov emails, sanctions evasion, a whole range of amazing operations that also need to be known in the West. And it's my job to, in many ways, to point to the Ukrainians, as you know, and say, look, very cool, over there, this guy, these guys, that person, that person, that person. So, InformNapalm, the bomb, the OG of OGs. 12 years, you know, when civilian skill set hits the ground in order to try to make a difference. Molodets.
Yeah, even I know the name InformNapalm. So, you know,
Amen.
that's, and I'm just a grunt on the ground.
Just a grunt.
Just a grunt on
So,
the ground.
what did you do this week, my friend?
Hold on, I'm just reaching for a pen. Hold on. Because we're bound to do.
Mr. Busy Man.
I've got my Kiev T-shirt on. This is a horse chestnut, which is the leaf of Kiev. I'm actually in Dnipro. Finally, I made it home. Yeah. So I came in. My first day back was a jet drone that came back here and hit an apartment block in Dnipro. So that was sort of a welcome home. Mm-hmm. And then straight into a medic course, you know, for 5 days. TCCC CLS course, which for those that don't know is quite an intense trauma med course, I call it. Really it's things we do in the military. It's more of a combat course on the front lines, and if you're living in cities and stuff like that, it's pretty useful too, because it concentrates more on massive hemorrhaging and battlefield injuries.
Right.
So I passed that on Monday in a test, but it's not. It was a lot of new stuff, but nothing I haven't done with the British Army and in the Ukraine military and living here for quite a while. But it's nice to get your certs updated, even and get back up to speed with first aid and medical care.
Yeah, and I would say I'm overdue for taking that part of it. So did you film some of it?
I did indeed. I'll edit it all. It's a bit in the med world, they're a bit competitive, so you got to make sure you put all the right stuff and they're happy with it to go
Right.
on, because there's got to put the right procedures on. Even though you're learning, people go, "Oh, you're
Right.
doing that wrong. Oh, you're doing that wrong." And you've got to be a bit careful with that. Also, got to get rid of all the location footage as well, and all the gubbins that go with that. And InformNapalm know all about that, so you got to get rid of all the anything could trace back to locations and stuff like that. And all that takes time, as you know, the editing and everything else that goes with it.
Right. Yeah, there's whole files of film that we've done where one, we're waiting on time, so they're not designed to come out anytime in the next several months, even like I think by this time next year, probably for a few bits of footage. And then
Yeah.
always we curate through whoever we're filming with, so that they're hip and cool that the OPSEC side has been covered.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah, for sure.
so how's the Russian spring offensive going?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, we'll go backwards this time, start where, but I think Zelensky said today it's the most comfortable it's looked for 10 months. That should tell you everything, despite everything that's going on.
35,000 Russian casualties was the
It's,
number I think he said today.
I was looking today, I put about 4 months ago, I put an episode on my YouTube called The Power Shift. It was
Hmm.
quite easy, really, to see what was happening, that we were now targeting Russian sites, command nodes and recycling plants, refineries, ammunition dumps. And these were surgical precision strikes using ballistics, homemade ballistics. And also on top of that, you could see that they were using drones a lot
Hmm.
more, firing them into Russia. And if you go back to 2022, could we fire a ballistic into Russia? No. Could we attack deep into the heart of Russia? No. So it's pretty easy to see where it was going then, and we've gone through ups and downs. And I've always said on this, I won't reiterate because we've said this before, but we're nowhere near the place we were just before Trump was inaugurated, before the elections.
Right, right,
Where he was even before he was elected, he was holding up artillery shells. He was, stopping military aid to Ukraine. So we didn't even know if we would have a Ukraine by the summer. So we're
right,
not in that place. Well, what I didn't expect was Ukraine to launch counterattacks and liberate over 400 square kilometers of Ukraine, pushed them out of Dnipro, and actually, I was probably one of a few people at the time saying, when they launched their assault on Pokrovsk, saying it ain't going to go by Christmas, dude, and it's still going at it down there now, even though Putin himself said you can come and I'll invite all the journalists and then come to. You can see the downfall of Pokrovsk, and they're still fighting down there. There's still, it's pretty violent, but it's not fallen. I mean, in a Ukraine perspective, if you pull back from Pokrovsk, where do you pull back to? Somebody else is going to get it. It's going to be an inch closer. So, Ukraine is exceptionally good at fighting for time, drawing Russia into these killing fields. It's just now we've gone on a step further. We're now really subjecting Russia to struggling with their economy, and it's deteriorated to the point where he's had his oligarchs trying to get money off them over the last week. And the worst thing that's happened is Trump's relaxing sanctions on Russia, and we can only assume why, and we've talked about this to death.
Yeah, I didn't get to. There's an update this afternoon. There was a particular person on the list that I was going to update my grid of sanctions, but that's been the game plan from day one with Trump. I've been going over data from 2016 forward again, bad habit of mine. Because when certain voices like to say, well, the sanctions don't matter or they didn't have an
Mm,
effect, if they did matter, they wouldn't have been putting so much effort into trying to roll them back, constantly trying to manipulate their way in and out of diplomatic circles to get, sanctions removed. So
absolutely.
obviously they matter.
They do.
And
They're not.
yeah,
You're gonna naturally work, try and find your way around sanctions as a country.
right.
You're going to try and work your way around them. They're like whack a mole, but they do. They are having an impact. They do work. Anybody that says they're, as you said, is telling you that they're not working. They are. They
Right.
are working. Why would you want to sort of try and relax them and get certain individuals off sanctions like today? So
Trump wants business as normal, business as usual in his mind.
yeah.
He wants to be able to conduct business with the terrorist regime regardless, and he doesn't like being told he can't.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we covered a lot of that on the last episode, Power, didn't we? It was like, how comes Russia is benefiting so much from decisions that are being made in Washington? It's
Right.
unbelievable. And the same beneficiary, Putin, is now giving intelligence to. If you haven't seen it, watch the last chat we did last Friday. Probably one of the best ones we've done, actually, at one of the most poignant points of the war so far. It's uncovering pretty much what Trump's doing and why it's not in the press and how, the fact that
Right.
he's lifted sanctions on a country that's supporting Iran with intelligence and weapons. Essentially, why is the Trump administration not on the front page for assisting in the killing of his own servicemen? So it's
Yeah.
bizarre.
And I put together my Hegseth. I had to change its tone a bit. The Hegseth article I mentioned with my conversation with Chloe yesterday that about Pete Hegseth essentially his bravado of the tough military. We're the toughest ever. We're just going to show you exactly how tough we are. And all the shackles are off. We won't be woke anymore, and quality generals saying, we don't talk like this. This
Yeah,
is stupid. This is actually stupid what he's doing. Plus, he's also setting up for war crimes problems. But he fired he fired top generals in the last 24 hours,
he
and
did.
that goes that goes back to my art of war grid, which I'm going to keep on these guys because it's a fun way to like it's not none of it's fun because people are in harm's way, but it's a cathartic, fun way of trying to assess where drunk Captain Pete is fucking up the army. And like, okay, so let's do the grid. Cash Patel gets rid of the counterintelligence units. Tulsi Gabbard doesn't want to know what's going on. That's investigating the president. So again, counterintelligence units and disinformation units that can't have those. Um, we're not hacker ready, so Cash Patel's emails have been hacked and dumped. And now you have um, the top generals being fired while you're in the war.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we talked about. The whole last chat we did was about it's not a coincidence anymore. When you take a step back and look at all these things together from, Trump's inauguration, where he's cancelled humanitarian aid, which really had an impact again that was underreported in Ukraine. Hitting those areas that people rely upon work and projects and money and help the
Yeah,
country who then just overnight had all their jobs cut, projects cut, including my wife who lost her job.
yeah.
And there was
USAID, for
wasn't.
those who don't know, there was a lot of different things that when different projects here that when people are bitching and moaning about everything from corruption and independent journalism, etc., that's where a lot of that money helped here in the country.
Yep,
Were small funds that would facilitate near frontline journalism in like Sumy and Chernihiv. Veterans Hub was partially funded from USAID, which was helping recovering veterans.
The
And
refugee hot kitchens were subsidised through to demining projects that
correct,
were going,
yeah,
which my wife was involved in. All those
right,
projects instantly got cancelled, and then that just benefits one country. That benefits Russia in some of the toughest areas on the front line. And it started, not just with the artillery held up by the Trump administration before he was even elected, but
right,
then as soon as he was elected, we had this wrecking ball of I'm all for audits. I'm all for auditing. People who this money goes to. But the car crash audit process that came about that's now looking problematic for Elon and the crews who are now, going through these interviews, and you're watching these cringy little teenagers who shut off this aid to Ukraine, or, and you're just sitting there thinking this is just, and that's just one of so many things now that when you take a step back, this is everything Trump has done has
hmm
aided Putin. And there's nothing you can, you don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist. So, part of why I got into journalism late was because I used to sit there going absolutely hacked off with it. I was absolutely fuming that, all this stuff was just not getting mentioned. And when I talked to you, we were on the ground and said there's just nobody reporting from the ground what it feels like to be on the ground here
right.
when you're seeing all this crap go on. So then it progressed on to
Well, let me give an
stopping
example that's
intelligence
tangible.
sharing. Yeah, it
Let me
stopped.
give you. Here's an intangible one: incoming missiles and nothing to intercept it.
Exactly. Intelligence sharing starts. You then got complete stop of military aid. Now, let's get this right. US is a producer. It's part of the supply chain to Ukraine. It's not
Correct.
essentially Europe stepped in and taken over and funding it. You don't
Right.
buy a car from the showroom and you don't buy a second-hand car. And then when you
hmm
buy a second-hand car, expect it to still be owned by the showroom.
Right. Right.
You just don't do it. So it's NATO and Europe that's funding this war and supporting Ukraine at the moment, not America. So they've literally pulled out of everything, and now he's threatening again this week to stop, the Pearl package and supplying arms to the Pearl package,
Yeah,
which
and I covered that, and also that Mark Rudy said that nothing had changed. Also, the officials here said nothing had changed so far. But I can tell you, there's no way that Washington Post would have gone that far to publish, we hear the following if it hadn't been there in some way. And they've been saying things along the line in public anyway about we're short of munitions here, therefore we have to take from Ukraine. Oh my God, we helped Ukraine and now we can't fight our war. And we would have been able to fight our war if not for Ukraine. And it gets old. Number two is that
does.
yeah, like the signaling about maybe we won't be in NATO. And Keith Kellogg, I don't know why people listen to Keith Kellogg. It's
I don't
it's almost
either.
as almost as bad as
Don't get me started.
trying to search out the good Russian argument. If people know my good Russian argument, um, is that he says, well, let's have a different alliance where we're not like we don't have that cumbersome NATO problem. We can do what we want, like like with Ukraine. I'm like, but you're not helping Ukraine. So you're bullshitting me.
Did America help the Brits during the Falklands crisis? No,
Nope.
no. I mean, it's like we got on that with ourselves.
No, we
We
made
ran.
punchlines about it because we didn't know where that was. We're Americans.
You just sit there going, I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, the whole thing is just bizarre. He's gone in. It's easy
Hello,
foreseeable.
Martin.
If you're good, Iran, hey, man, if Iran isn't some village, Gundi country, second rate, it's not Venezuela. It's
Well, what's always interesting
civilized.
is where they suddenly care about people. So they hate Muslims with one breath, but oh my God, we have to free the wonderful people of Iran in the next breath.
Yeah,
And I'm fine for
yeah.
that. I'm actually perfectly okay with liberating the people of Iran from the
Yeah, I'm
regime.
no fan of the regime. Let's get it
Right, right,
that way.
right. But I always find it interesting. Like, when this is over, they're still Muslims, right? Uh, just curious because
It's everything is going.
I
So we've
if you
got
want
now.
to win a war, I happen to know a war that you can help win. And Sean, I've been picking away at, like, what would it take to win this war based on existing stock, existing interest and force. Should the forces suddenly ally to get their shit together and defeat Russia? What would it take? And it's still there. It takes will, and that's why Russia applies itself in the PSYOP model, the active measures model, reflexive control model, whatever title people want for the week, to get, like, sanctions lifted. We got to free up the oil that's already on the ocean right now. Don't you know anything? We have to free up
Millions,
the oil that's already there.
millions, millions, millions.
Chris can
Just
have a Coca-Cola. That's right. Coca-Cola smacks Svoboda. Pizdets Pepsi.
Sean, I have some hot cross buns from M&S arrived yesterday from the UK. I'm making coffee. You are
It's
welcome to
cold.
join. Chris can have a Coca. Thank you. Love to. I'll tell you what, let's get back on topic because we covered what we talked about last night. The offensive is literally, it started as a spring offensive, but that went horribly wrong.
Right.
There was something like 6,000 Russian casualties in, 3 days or something ridiculous like
Hmm.
that. They have literally stalled. Go back to what we said about Zelensky. He said it's probably the most on top of they've been on this whole thing, in the last 10 months, which must be killing Putin as he speaks, as he's struggling. I think we've had the fourth consecutive month where Ukraine has killed sustained casualties higher than they are recruiting, which is great
Right.
because he still wants to go to 50,000 casualties a month. The number crunching, it's all about the data and about hitting those targets and getting that data, crossing the T's and dotting the lowercase J's. So expect the casualties to go up more. You're seeing now, back to those early days, 1,300 casualties, 1,500 casualties. They're coming in quite frequent again as Russia's trying to make those, what we call the flag run, sending real scrope bags to just pop up a flag so that the commanders can tell their bosses that they've made
Right.
some inroads.
Right.
Which, if you've been on the front lines, this is quite common and been going on for some time. And they're not the most state of the art troops. Normally, they're prisoners. Normally, they're guys that have had very little training, who they send out to do these suicide missions.
One of the dead Russian patches I have was a result of that kind of melee. The guy was
It is.
basically on tagged the flag up, and then got thwacked.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's where the
yeah.
patch came from. Like, shouldn't have been there. Go home.
It literally is. I mean, you've got the grey zone of the killing field. It's not a front line anymore. It's a front line that's probably 100 kilometers minimum wide. I was speaking to two Brit drone operators that were working on the front lines last week, who were telling me it's
Hmm.
exchange for exchange. They're fighting Rubicon, and they're getting it's like literally they're sending drones. They're looking for where the drones are coming out from. Then they're firing drones in. There's casualties coming off the front line saying there's no artillery anymore. It's just strange. In my day, now it's drones because they're cheaper, more effective, and they're coming in. He said the place is just full of drones and fiber optics. It's coming in everywhere. And now they're dropping canisters in. They've got thermite. For those that don't know, it's like I think white phosphorus, similar to white phosphorus. They're putting thermite on drones. You can fly these drones in through slits. The first round to the last round is pinpoint accurate. So the world is drones now. So as soon as these guys run from a building to try and put up a flag, they're like, stick the flag up, look up, get a
Yeah.
big thumbs up, and that's it. They're running back straight into the flipping basement somewhere where they're watching them go in, and then they just pound them and kill them all. This is bizarre. Sorry,
Can
I've
we
got a
get
sore
it?
throat.
Can we just get it with Patrick Lancaster on camera? I'm waiting for my checklist there. I do
No,
have a
they're too
checklist.
clever for that. They're not going to go to the front. And Graham Phillips of this world aren't going to go to the front. They're living at a large in Mariupol, and
Yeah, I saw the new propaganda videos they put out about the new life in Mariupol.
Yeah, they show the same clip, same spot, same place. You only have to go on Google Earth to see how even where our house is, without giving too much away, is still bomb craters, derelict buildings all around it. They've rebuilt some of the council offices, same block of flats in the same place. They love filming from different angles,
Right,
but generally the roads are shagged. They got a problem with Medicare. But this is why Putin wants to cut off the communication with the occupied territories now, which is the next step. I've been saying this for 15 months, 16
yeah,
months,
exactly.
probably longer, 2 years maybe. I've been saying the Iron Curtain's coming up. Now it started. It's going to be like North Korea very shortly, and they're going to make it impossible for us to talk to family members in the occupied territories because he doesn't want anybody to know what's going on there. And that's the
Right,
whole reason why, he's pulled all Telegram and WhatsApp and Google. And this is why the Russians are now up in arms. I mean, that is underreported again. Putin's decision to pull all the Western social media platforms. Telegram was their military app where they raised money, where they talked to each other on the front
hmm
line.
hmm
It's now binned it off. And how many have died because of that? Well, Ukraine has taken back 400 square kilometers of ground because, one of the biggest problems is you can kill people now trying to put antennas up, up on high because they haven't got Starlink
right.
anymore. So this is all
Well, I noticed that
linked
the
in.
European, the pro Russian accounts we've always suspected from being in Europe are quite active.
Well, I was listening to another
Because they're
podcast
not
today.
blocked. They're not blocked from Russia like they claim to be. I'm in Russia. No, you're not.
Russia's using all sorts of chess apps to get communications across
Yeah,
now,
of course.
and kids apps to put messages across. And that is
Did you
how
see?
bad the communication is in Russia right now on the front
Did you see some of the videos of the life is better without the internet?
line. Did you see the one where they've just put in a video on how to use a ring phone?
Yes.
I was like, you're going to bring back eight-track
We're
tapes soon.
back to the Soviet ringtone phone.
Betamax will come make a sudden return in Russia, I think, or the floppy disk. I mean, they're literally going back to the 80s. I mean, without going in, we've talked about it before about it being a Soviet regime. They're just going back to what they know against the young, dynamic, tech savvy Ukrainians, which look like they're winning that
Hmm.
battle.
Well, at least they got the Oscar. So we had a lot of activity in the sky today. We had actually one death over
Mm.
here in Kiev in the north area, and then strike just south, not too far from me in Obikov this afternoon. The change of the grid from the 3 a.m. fight until throughout the afternoon is upon us. What's happening down south?
Uh, excuse me. Dnipro's
Yeah,
been quite
no trouble.
quiet since I've been back. Essentially, it's not had the same. It's not a Kharkiv.
Right.
But we do get it when we get it bad. We've had drones of the day. We had a jet drone come in, but generally it's been pretty quiet, which tells me we're due at some point, unfortunately. But it is a hub city.
hmm
Dnipro, for those who don't know, was a quarantine city back in the Soviet era. It's the R&D center for the Soviet times, which is why Putin really wants it back. All the space rockets through to the Black Sea Fleet, through to, fuel was made into Dnipro deep underground. And, so when we do get here, it's normally with big stuff because they want to, get into the factories and what's going on or where they think it's going on. But generally, it's been quite quiet. It's not a city under stress at all, considering we're a couple of hours from Zaporizhia, and that's getting pummeled.
Yeah.
Petropavlivka on the outskirts, about 2 hours from Dnipro, getting pummeled. So essentially, we are inching closer to the front lines. Yet it's been pretty quiet at the moment. But however, the Russians have upscaled. It's more terrorism now. They've always
Yeah.
attacked civilian targets, civilians. Even since Mariupol, women and children and carpet bombing the city with air dominance. So they've always attacked. But what's worrying this time is that they're openly doing it. We talked about Lviv the other week.
Right.
We've seen Kharkiv. They flew jet drones straight into an apartment block in Dnipro. They're purposely attacking civilians throughout the day now, and that is new. It used to be at night mainly. We very rarely saw drones through the day, but now it's 24/7. They're just hitting everything from. I mean, what people don't know is when I talk about it, said they even hit Ukrainian pets, and they're like, "What?" I said, "Yeah." That's what new drone operators, are practicing on dogs, animals, if they can't
That's
find
right.
any civilian to hit. So it's really, I'm really surprised at the lack of response around the world now to what's happening. Even though they're hitting maternity hospitals, and I know you got some figures on it, but it's literally disgusting, to be honest. There is nothing they won't hit.
I actually did not finish, and we talked about it before. I started, and I have a document ready for it of the healthcare facilities that have been hit in the last 4 years,
Mm.
and a few of which I saw here in town. But yeah, I need to actually update that and and finish that piece. I want to go to the part though I think that's interesting when it comes back to the international field, which is that Ukraine approaching the countries in the Middle East to say, "So we have cards. Interested?"
I think
And
that's great.
yeah,
I mean, it's put a whole new perspective on Ukraine. It's certainly pushed them into the public eye a lot more as one of the leading countries in this type of warfare. I mean, I read
right.
about it the other day. NATO was the gold standard, and it should be. It still is, but it can't keep up with the war that's now into its fifth year, and the battlefield is changing month on month.
Hmm. Hmm.
Ukraine can't NATO, so he can't keep up with that. So it will catch up and it will make amendments. It will change, but where does that leave NATO with a Russian army that's totally evolving and fighting this war, into a fifth year, who's, going to be making some changes moving
Hmm.
forward? Because this is a war that's never been fought before.
Right.
Um, it's a very different war to even still what NATO's trading now. I mean, it still don't really understand a lot of what's going on, how it's fought here, how trench war's fought, how drones operate or are used. So, I don't think for 1 minute the Russian army will be able to beat NATO, even as much as I think they're lagging behind modern day warfare here. But it is worrying that how far behind not just NATO, but Trump's not even seeing it. Says we don't need Ukraine's help, while all of the Middle East are now taking on board this expertise. Hold on a minute, they've got the
Yeah.
gear, the expertise. We're going to bring them in. Yet Trump's like, nope. Again, it smacks of another one. I'm not going to upset Russia. I'm not going
Yeah, and
to.
I got distracted by pounding on Keith Kellogg because again, what the fuck's up with Keith
Oh,
Kellogg?
that guy.
But he said about this thing with NATO, how we'd be able to do something. What bothers me is that not enough people in Western press are pushing back on the difference between dragging someone into a fight and a defensive fight like what's happening in Ukraine. Ukraine didn't start the fight and suddenly needs Europe to help put the fight down. That's not what happened. So, the defensive alliance part, I had a rule way back in the day. If someone went and started a fight, then they gotta go fight that fight.
Yeah,
If they
absolutely.
didn't start that fight, then we're on.
The
But
straits were open the day
yeah,
before he decided to attack Iran. So we're
yeah,
in this. And again, how does this benefit anybody else apart from Moscow and Tehran? It doesn't. I
right.
mean, it's simultaneously, Tehran's never had to earn so much money. It now controls international waters,
And
which
he's
it
already
didn't
he's
do
already
prior to.
bored. He wants to go do something else now.
it's bizarre how the media is not reporting on a lot of this. And we touched on earlier the fact that the main beneficiaries, Russia, is now supplying intelligence and drones and adapted drones to Iran, and yet Trump's allowing them to rake in millions, billions, and they're targeting US service personnel. How this is not on front page news, I have no idea. I don't know how this is the way it's been. You're American, as I said before. Don't apologize, but it's just I don't know how it look. I don't understand how it's not
I
front page
went a
news.
different direction on the politic a long time ago. Actually, I was sorting through my Cheney Watch work that was in the mid 2000s about what I said happened under unitary vice presidential power and the problems that would occur XYZ, and I'm reading it going, this is way too spooky right now. Things that we shouldn't be doing. There's reasons why you want oversight.
Yeah,
And,
somebody just put, Dad just put, Bondi's gone, Noam's gone, that dickhead, racist, Nazi, Ku Klux Klan dickhead from the border bloody place is gone.
Greg Bavino.
I mean, my money next is Tulsi Gabbard's going to go next. I'm pretty sure. Should we have a bet on this? Should we ask everybody out there who they think is going to go next? Kash Patel,
let's do
Tulsi
that.
Gabbard.
Let's do that. Actually, we should do that. A poll to the audience in the live chat. Tell us who you think will be gone next.
Please, Trump. I'm going to put Trump. It's going to be
bored,
hard.
but he's bored. And one of the things that when I started, and I had to blame this conversation we are honored to have with my obsession with trying to juxtapose Trump and Hegseth and Putin to the art of war. But the 13 chapters tell us something. And boredom is in there, actually. It's sort of a thing. Because the king that Sun Tzu or Sun Yi went to go talk to was basically kind of more into his concubines and his good times, and like Mar-a-Lago. And he kind of looked around the court and went, "I think I know where the problem is, sir." And that's the whole message of Sun Tzu, right there. That's it. You almost don't even have to read the fucking book. I just gave you the ending, and right there, the problem is the king, sir. And it applies when you see that Trump is bored. Like, he launches a fucking war. I'm just sometimes stunned at how stupid the stupid goes, because I've studied a lot of American presidents, and stupid things they said did.
Donald Trump. That just made me laugh.
Donald Trump is just the absolutely dumbest sack of shit to ever sit in the White House, and he's bored after starting a war. He's absolutely
you can
bored.
see his face now, can't you? He's just so angry it's not over. We haven't won yet, despite telling everybody they've won, despite an F-15 going down today in a country they've already beaten.
I'm trying to hold back my laughter because it's just absolutely absurd how absurd this whole shit is.
I said we're going to try and get through this episode without talking about Trump. You can't. It just takes the oxygen out of the room, doesn't it? Everything leads back.
Well, see, I'm old enough to remember when we were talking about senile Reagan, and that Reagan needed to go because he was, his memory was lapsing, and so, George Bush Jr. or George Bush Sr., Bush the First, was at least a competent person who could run the office, and only so evil.
Yeah.
And now we are all these years later, and we have Tweedle dumbass J.D. Vance right behind him that is supposed to go to see Viktor Orban and throw some oxygen on the pro-Kremlin beast that is.
That's
this next week.
Just fair. It's going to be his death knell. What that is. That's going to be his death knell. I said J.D. Vance has just written a book about Catholicism and communion, and I was like, great. And you support.
Is he going to argue with the Pope?
You are the biggest supporter of the biggest killer of Christians since Hitler and Stalin.
Norma says it'd be Gabbard than Patel as long as Trun'll dump can find replacements from Fox News. So I think
Yeah.
Gabbard could be someone that could go because she's weird, and weird
I think
doesn't
she's going
fly.
to go because of that other guy. Forgive me, I can't remember his name.
The one that Joe
Off the
Kent.
Yeah, I think she's going to go. He was under her, and
She
I
blew
think
through. She blew through some of Trump's excuses. Is part of the prevailing thought of why she would be gone. Is because
yeah,
her congressional testimony was weird,
mm,
and because she's Tulsi Gabbard, that's all she knows how. We're waiting for a schedule with Steve Hassan, who is an expert in cult mentality, and he did a video. had not had a chance to see this. He did a video on Tulsi Gabbard, and she is a cult mentality example 101 when she speaks. She has all the signs of someone who speaks in programming language, and I can imagine that's for Donald Trump having her up there to fog us feels fun, but when it comes to accountability back to him, and he's a narcissist, that's when he won't like it, and she'll still do it.
yeah.
She'll
This
still
is
do the
your
cult try.
expertise here. I mean, the only I remember is the Aloha spirit.
The
It was
Aloha
just,
spirit.
and
She
this
goes
is
to
a woman
see.
who
She goes.
loved
Yeah.
the
She,
Syrian regime.
yeah. She goes to Syria and comes back and like it was no big deal. Everyone's a terrorist except Assad. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, now Trump's
Nothing
meeting.
baked in the code like that one.
Now Trump's shaking hands with an Al Qaeda guy. It's just like, oh man, the world's just fucked up, Chris.
One man's
It's just
freedom
gone.
fighter is another man's
Another
terrorist.
man's terrorist. Yeah, yeah. I lived by that. I lived by
Oh
that. To
my
be
god.
fair, my whole house is full of terrorists. All my friends are terrorists. I mean,
I read
you
about
just
this
get
on this
used
place
to
called
it,
the
pal. You just
internet.
get used to it. To be fair, it's
Oh my
like
god.
I'm a Nazi mercenary to terrorist, so you just get used to the tags. It just. And my geography teacher said I wouldn't amount to anything. It's like at least
Right.
4 world leaders know my name, mate, and I'm just about to take Russia to court for a second time.
Oh my god. So
Yeah.
we're at April 3rd, and you were 4 years ago. Right now, you were battling in Mariupol.
Yeah, we were looking
Ugh.
at. I think we touched on it last time. Yeah, literally,
Yeah.
I was planning my escape. Now I knew we were on our last legs. I was captured on April the 13th, so
Right.
we still got about 10 days to go before we started that fateful trip trying to break out of Mariupol. But
Mm.
by now we were down probably in my platoon. At least half of the platoon were injured or dead. And we were looking at probably 60-70% of the company was injured for mostly for shrapnel, because they refused to sort of get in a fight. They wanted to bomb us to shit. So, but yeah, April the 13th as well, I was captured and started my time, and but yeah, I always go back to this time. I mean, it's really hard not to. I can't believe it's been 4 years. It just seems like yesterday.
Right.
But when I talk to people now, it's like seems a different lifetime ago. I started to feel like those 80s pop stars who sing that one hit wonder they did back in the 80s. I'm starting to feel like that now. Starting to sit there and go, yeah, well, during the war, you know. But I sit there. I'm very proud of. I said to you before, I'm very
The
proud of what we
war
did.
that's still going on.
Yeah, now prolonged because of the war in Iran and the funding that Putin's getting and supplying Iran, and it's a really difficult time at the moment. I think I think we're safe. I wouldn't be in Dnipro if I didn't think we were safe. I think we're safer now than we were when I was looking to move west towards Kiev. I think just before winter, I was talking to you about it, wasn't I? Sort of saying
Yeah.
it's getting pretty dicey down here. I think I'm thinking about moving possibly west, but I don't know. I said I moved by spring, and I'm still here at spring. So it's like I said, it's been quiet compared to elsewhere in Ukraine, which tells you one that they haven't got the rockets and the drones to be able to hit everywhere in Ukraine all of the time.
Right.
And also they need to stockpile and save because they haven't got enough missiles. So it tells you they don't have the capabilities to do it. Where they've taken on the front lines, they don't have the support elements to capitalize on that success. They're now losing more people than they can recruit over the last 4 months, and that's just going to get worse. And now you've really, we talked about it last time, you really should be paying attention to Russian propaganda because the swagger's gone.
This
You
is the
know,
current air raid map for right now.
where's me? Where am I? Where am I? Oh my God, we're in red. Yeah, we're always bloody red.
Yeah.
So, the Russian propaganda is turning on itself now, and he's now starting to send people to psychiatric wards, and he's starting to off people, he's starting to prison people, and that's because it's not going well for Putin. He's under immense pressure at the moment, which you don't see in the West. You don't see it in America, you don't see that, don't report on it. So, he's under immense pressure at the moment to get a win. He's gone as far as saying he's taken Lugansk again and all the surrounding
Yeah,
land.
right. I saw that. Right.
And he says he's already taken it 3 times. So, he's already taken Kupiansk, but it's probably about 20 people around
Right.
Kupiansk and in Kupiansk. He struggled with Pokrovsk, lost so many people in Pokrovsk. So, he's not making any gains. He's stalled. And for the first time, in the last year, the advance has stopped. So
Right.
he's down to terrorism, which means that he's now increased his target in the civilian population. Everybody's heard of the Kherson Safari. So, and that's it's born out of that. There's not much repercussions on Putin, so he's just escalating that, hitting schools, kindergartens, hospitals, religious sites. He's going to town on a Catholic community, doesn't like them at all, so he's bombing those. And evangelicals, he's
And
destroying.
tomorrow is Saturday. Is 1,500 days since full scale invasion began. 1,500 days. And 44, 26 since 12 years ago with the beginning of the seizure of Crimea. I always hate when I hear this annex of, like, annex is like what my city did to a neighborhood outside. That's not what happened. But anyway, 1,500 days, and for the amount of what he's put in to lose, it's a loss. It just has to come to an end, and I think that it still requires getting very serious to various world leaders and saying, cut the shit, provide the firepower, the human power if necessary, and get this completed and stop throwing oxygen on the monster.
That's the problem. You've got Trump still throwing oxygen on the fire, bailing out Putin at every chance he can get. And when it gets tough for Putin, he's got him shielding him now. Because you think Putin has launched one of the biggest wars in Europe since World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who gets the press? Trump. Trump
Mm-hmm.
just drains the press. He attracts the press.
Correct.
And that's just shielding Putin. You got to ask why that's the case now, and why is we allowing Russia to get windfalls from high prices in oil. It's only the saving grace. It's only Ukraine hitting the refineries that's keeping that him benefiting from that completely. The poor Russian lads watching their refinery just burn down in that
Right.
video clip you saw. There's
As I
nothing they can
call
do. They're
Ukrainian,
just looking at it and go,
sanctions.
it's like, I thought we were winning this war.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't have a job
Ukrainian
anymore.
sanctions are so much better than the American sanctions, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's
The
it's
refinery go
not
boom.
going. Blackouts in Moscow. It's not going their way, and now it's stalled. It's really going to be an interesting time. I think we're at a pinnacle point. We're not, to coin Churchill's phrase, we're not at the beginning. We're not at the end, but we're definitely at the end of the beginning. It's certainly an interesting time because I think
We had
it's
blackout today,
make
by the
or
way.
break
Here,
time.
for the record,
Did you?
we had yeah. mid-afternoon, I was done. I was waiting for the computers to do backup anyway. Decided to rest for a bit before the show, and the power went out, and
Yeah.
so took a little bit of a break on that. Waited, and about 2 hours later, everything was back on. But yeah, it's still the power system that we live off of, the generation is gone, so it's piped in
I'm not going to read what that guy said.
from
It's
Europe.
time, but I certainly wasn't a believer in compromat initially. I couldn't believe an American would turn on his own country. I certainly, with Trump, didn't really want to believe that. But having living in Ukraine and seen what's going on, and now with Iran, I'm pretty sure after Alaska, something went on in Alaska, and
Mhm.
I'm a big believer that I'm converted. They've got compromat or something on it because everything Trump does is geared up to benefit Russia. And for the life of me, I can't understand why. We've now got to the point, as I keep saying, that he's releasing sanctions on Russia, who are using that money to target US service personnel in Iran. And now I can't
Right.
understand any American that would be happy with that. Yet that's hushed over quite, not even in the paper. I have no idea why. I'd love somebody to tell
I
me why.
mean, to have someone say, "Okay, you want the W or the L above your name?" I want the W, right? Yes, you want the W above your name, right? You want the winning category. Yeah. You're not in the winning category, sir. You know, like
Yeah.
pound for pound. And I always know this with Trump, his optic about Zelensky. When he sees Zelensky, he doesn't respect him just inherently. So if he saw Klitschko, you know, just physically, the way in which Trump thinks, it's like, oh, big guy, oh, strong. I can punch him in the shoulder and it would hurt my hand. He sees Zelensky, who's the exact same height for the most part as Putin, but he sees Putin as a judo master.
Mm.
These are ways in which stupid Trump sees power. He sees power in his fear-based way, and he doesn't have a fear of Zelensky, and Zelensky doesn't use fear-based behavior towards him. He doesn't invoke fear in him at all. It's not his way. It's not his style. He's an influence guy. And that's it's so fucking irritating to realize that the fate of people here is drawn on Trump being such a fucking idiot, that that level of like optics are enough to sway his opinion, because for instance, I thought about Poroshenko and why he gets along different with Poroshenko, is that Poroshenko comes in with his oligarch behavior, and business is business, and Trump doesn't like the Kremlin, therefore I like him. He's we can have good discussions on business, and Trump buys that bullshit, but only
Yeah.
so far, right?
I think Norma's right. I think there's a lot of people now thinking there's got to be compromat. It
Hmm.
has to be because you just can't. I mean, what man in his world would do what make the decisions he's making? I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
of course, yeah.
especially Jay, if you just take Iran. Why would you, if you were going to go in, you would plan it. You would talk to your allies. You would say, look, we're thinking about, you would build a fail-safe plan where we can move in and do this quickly,
Hmm.
get other people. It just hasn't. It hasn't included anybody. And then it's thrown a wobbly because NATO's not involved. NATO, it's nothing to do with NATO. It's a defensive pact, as you
Right,
know.
right.
It's nothing to do. Like, did they come and help us with the Falklands? No. I mean, it's like,
But like I said,
uh,
the old rule in my neighborhood was, you start a fight, that's on you. Good luck. Don't go
yeah,
starting fights.
absolutely.
But if you didn't start the fight, it didn't take much to get, five or six on two or three. If two or three people ganged up on one friend,
Yeah,
five or six of us would show up, unless we found out that friend did something. And I can think of only two times where it was iffy. Mostly that didn't happen because the rule kind of worked.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
don't
yeah,
go start
absolutely.
shit and then drag your friends into the shit. That's what you
No,
don't
you
do. It's real
absolutely.
simple. It
I'm just
just
looking
seems
at.
so simple. I'm sorry. To me, things seem so simple, and yet the world is not working that way.
No, I mean it's very money based. It's a very money based administration. It's transactional
Yeah.
based.
Mona Leona had something that I want to address, which is if who you vote for already has the view that you espouse, what to do.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. What?
So do you see? We have Mona's comment there, yelling at all of my reps, but I live in Duckworth State. Protest. So when would I call your lateral? Like your from your state rep and your state senator to your federal rep and senator to your president. If it's all the category you already like, then what do you do? And I think that you go out and you make your voice be known anyway in some way, shape, or form in your community. Get people to go vote. Get people prepared to cast their vote for this midterms and get some accountability in office and talk to people who have their ears open to new things.
Don't wait for the midterms. Do it now. Yeah, as somebody
Yeah,
said,
exactly.
wait for that because that's how you
Yeah,
ended
yeah.
up in this mess in the first place. If you've got
Yeah.
to be active now and start pushing now. And look at me. I mean, prime example is that I'm not a journalist. I feel it's something I can move into because I've got a degree of knowledge. And how I've got this far, I don't know. I've written a book, and there's nothing I've ever done before. But I'm now writing to defend my country, my home, and because I felt
Right.
injustice at the way Putin portrayed me while he had me in captivity. I was angry. I was fuming
Absolutely.
to the point where it's taken over my life. This could happen to any one of us, and it's happened to my friends. My wife's lost 2 homes. She lost her home in Crimea. She can't see her family. We lost our home in Mariupol, family home. This is not something I thought I'd be doing in my 50s. Excuse me, I'm still
Well,
recovering.
that's
So,
okay. This the
um,
comment from its time. We ended up this way because of a shit ton of fucking Americans are stupid and shit on the stick. Okay, anyway. Did I read all of that?
yeah,
Anyway. Now, I'm gonna go with it though for a minute to say that part of what it drives me to try to take some of the pieces and break them apart is, that Americans unfortunately are not showing collective intelligence on a range of matters. And this has been true for a while. So usually the pieces I've always tried to dig into, like on gun control or, depending on what the topic is, immigration, is I try to go to what I think is misunderstood in the commentary. And in the case of Ukraine, it's part of my task to articulate the life we live here, the consequences of inaction and or action, and try to make sure I hear what Americans hear back about that set of problems, so that we can adjust the message and or the information flow. And the better we do that, hopefully, we'll get some action to stop the fucking Russians from killing people.
hopefully. I think we're going to see a lot more internal problems in Russia now. I'm
Oh yeah,
starting to get that wind now of dissent within propagandists who are openly dissent. You got to go back, as we touched on before, with Prigozhin. He got 200 kilometers. He's going back towards Moscow. Uh,
allegedly
you know,
dead. Evgeny Prigozhin
unchallenged.
allegedly dead.
Unchallenged. I mean, people were looking for someone to take, over. People are losing. Think about what Putin promised to where he is now. He's
Yeah,
annexed far more territory than he actually controls. He
right.
can't. He can't even get Donetsk Oblast after 5 years. I mean, it's deeply embarrassing. He's in a central command really that feels that the layers upon layers of Russian management feel that they need to tell the one above them what they think they want to hear, so he can report it to his boss
Right.
that they make. And that's where your problem lies with Russia to a degree, is that by the time it gets up to Putin, it's far from anything that's happening on the battlefield. And this is a guy that doesn't historically, look at the internet or look at intelligence reports for himself. So how
Well,
much
one of the
how
things in
much
my
Putin?
calculation, my Sun Tzu calculation of Putin, which I think is very important, which is very different than Trump. So I want to remind what I said about Trump. Trump is so bad. And when I say Trump, I don't mean Trump himself. I mean Trump with all of the umbrella of stupid that's around him is so bad. Sun Tzu could not have imagined a general who did not want intelligence. That was not a
Or a
concept.
leader who was just so stupid whose brain was mashed
But
potato.
but the idea in the 13th chapter where the five types of deployment of spies, he would have to create a sixth one called the dumbass general who didn't want spies,
Dumbass
because that doesn't
chief of
exist in his. Now, but the other ones do exist with Putin, and one of them, which brings me back to that lump of shit, is that when they don't tell you the truth because of some culture of distrust, then you're fucked, and that's a problem that
yeah.
Putin's had for a while.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's something in that. I think there's a lot to be said for people faking results. It is a fake
Oh yeah, yeah.
country.
Fake
It's a
results
fake.
and right. That's part of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is that's what it's all about. The military has been so stripped. The Russian military has been so stripped because it was the
Hmm.
easiest place to siphon the money off. So when he says he's going to bring in 25 billion to improve the occupied territories, you can bet your bottom dollar 10% of that's probably going to get to where it needs to get to. The rest of it will be corruption siphoned off, and that's Russian fashion. That's well known. You know,
Mm.
even in Ukraine, I mean, that was generally uh, when I first got here. You know, it was like 10% pretty much actually gets once you've siphoned it off corruption, embezzlement, low level corruption. By the time you get to the tea lady, you know, she's making a shilling somewhere along the line before you know the money's used to get to where it needs to get. And that's the culture, you know, and when I first got to Ukraine, and certainly the Russian culture hasn't changed. You know,
Right.
Putin uses um, people who are skimming the corruption because he needs to call it a favour later. Then he's got them banged to rights. If they
Right.
don't do it, he's going to jail them. So you know, this is a KGB agent. That's how he works. He wants
Right.
people to slip up. He wants to get people that have, in somebody else's words, on it, touched kids. You know, this is what he wants to do. This is what Putin was trained to do. That he would get compliment on people. So it's not illogical that Russia and Putin's got something on Trump. I mean,
Well,
and
and
the
also
problem
people
is,
miss. Yeah.
if Russia's got it, you can pretty bet sure Mossad's got it, and if Mossad's got it, you can pretty sure China have got it too. So it's only a matter of time before this actually eventually gets out.
Well, I think people misunderstood the Steele dossier at its root. They, when it got made public, which was it was made public um, without intent. That's not, it wasn't a completed product. It was a gathering product,
Mm.
and a lot of the commentary, in essence, points to the Trump we know. There's very little in what was said about Trump that we don't already sort of know true about Trump. What's important is that when Christopher Steele was trying to gather information through contacts he knew in Russian orbit, the way he's approaching it is, what is the word about Donald Trump? Oh, Trump. Oh, they have something on Trump, like the PP tape, or something. Now,
Mm.
that doesn't mean that it's literally true. It means that that's the belief about Trump, is that the Kremlin has something on him. Now, let's juxtapose that against fictitious person, you know I don't know, give me a good name, Jonathan Goodfellow.
Mm.
Jonathan Goodfellow is a doctor who's come and gone, but what do you know on him? I don't know much. I mean, I guess he's a doctor. He comes and helps kids. Like, that's not what was said about Donald Trump. You
Mm.
see my point? Donald Trump was not someone who had an innocuous opinion. It was a series of things that match essentially the Donald Trump we know. that he's a manipulative, lying business sack of shit. That can't finish a deal, can't complete a negotiation. Like he goes to
Can't
meet
talk
Kim.
to anybody.
Yeah, can't talk to anyone. Has to talk down to everyone. Has to surround himself with losers because he feels bad about himself. Needs everyone to pat him on the back and make up
Yeah.
fucking awards for him, like this kind of peace prize, that kind of peace prize, the American First Prize, like just bullshit. And they knew this, and so when people shoot down the dossier, they're sort of missing the point. That
When you've
yes,
got
yeah,
someone like Pete Hegseth
oh,
running
yeah.
the Department of War, you just have to. I mean, you hear him
Sean, it's Sean, it's
talk.
Department
It's
of
like
War.
it's just like, yeah, man, yeah, we're gonna kill them all. It's like a
I
frat.
can't do it.
I mean,
I
it's
just
like
can't do it.
it's just. South Park
I'm
makes me laugh. It
I'm
just
just
that
too
makes me
docile
laugh.
to do that.
He is so solid, that guy. He just talks like a private in the NAFI bar, in the junior ranks hall. He's not. It's nowhere near. And when you
That's
said when he
always
was
the
going,
first guy to get
well,
the
he picks
shit
people more
fucking knocked
stupid
out
than
of him.
him.
Well, in a
Oh,
bar fight, that's the first one to get the shit knocked out of him while everyone else is still like able to take it on the jaw. That's the one that cannot take it on the jaw.
it's just. I mean, it's frustrating, isn't it? It just. It really is
If we take it serious,
frustrating. Oh, you have to. There's people dying now. I mean,
absolutely,
it's like I'm surprised cosmetically Ukraine is still able to look the way it looks with the
right,
fuck around factor that Trump's put in. You know,
right.
and then you take in we're going to invade Greenland and we might even take over Canada and then suddenly he's crying because everyone's gone, fuck off, we're not helping you, you're a fucking lunatic. It's like, it's bizarre. It really is. I'm losing my voice. We'll probably have to call time on it soon. My
Yeah,
voice
well,
is
I
going
do know
gradually.
this. They have right now, well, we have a down jet in Iran, the F-15,
Yeah.
but there is a new NASA released photo of the Earth taken from Artemis, so we can see ourselves and let it be a reminder of who we are.
Should
We
we
are
finish on a good note?
sure, of course,
We're fucking winning this war. Russia has stalled after 5 years, can't take Donetsk Blast, has stalled where the president of Ukraine has now said, this is the best it's been for 10 months. We're now knocking out over 30,000 Russians a month. If that isn't
exactly.
anything to be happy about, then, that's got to be finish on a good note. So, it isn't all bad. We hone in because Putin wants us to hone in on those
Right.
missile strikes. He wants us to look at Lviv. He's targeting those places because of their high interest. He's running out of options. This is a Russia that's recycling Soviet playbooks, run
Yeah.
out of options, under a lot of pressure at home. And that's why you're seeing a lot of terrorist targeting now, because this is going to get worse before it gets better, the more desperate Putin becomes.
Well, and I think that
So,
one of the things I can say is that, and I think you'll agree with me, is that when I feel stressed about any of this, I look at my neighbor who's Ukrainian, and I don't mean singularly, but my Ukrainian neighbors, and ask myself where I would rather be. And I'm right where I'm supposed to be, you know.
yeah.
So, and I said this to you earlier. We were talking about what to present tonight. Is that sometimes I'm thankful for the problems that I actually have versus problems that others have. My friends who are at the front are tired.
Mm.
Yes, thankfully the weather's changing, but we can do our part abroad. And I'll say this to all of our viewers: there's a place that you can do things. And one of the parting thoughts for tonight, and I don't know if I'll do something over the weekend. We'll see what's happening. But when I was preparing the piece on InformNapalm, uh, a big part of it is that just like with Cheney Watch and other groups that I was working around, um, there's no money in it. It's to be done so that people will learn and it's a patriotic duty at a level that's without words. Um, Here, there are a range of ways of which people fight back for their country and try to do their part to make a difference both here and abroad. And I think that that's really what, I don't know, Shaun could probably, elaborate in a different direction from his own position, but that's what inspires me to get up and find another thing to get done each day that will help someone in front of me get through, and also provide from somewhere deep in my consciousness, the best I can give to them to get to a victory or get to a state of peace.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, I'm quite competitive. I hate losing. So I'm going to be here till
Yeah,
the
yeah,
end.
exactly.
Do you know what I mean? I fight, but if I take out of that, yeah, I wrote today, I said, there's no such thing as Russophobia. None at all.
Yeah,
At the end of the
exactly.
day, they stole my house. They killed my friends. They tortured me. They jailed me. They gave me the death penalty, destroyed our community. They're still killing kids, families, women, and children, blowing up hospitals. Russia's made this. There's no such thing as Russophobia. This is life experience. So,
Right.
this is where we sit now. This is life experience, and we have to keep plowing on. You can't, was it Stallone said, life's about getting knocked down and picking yourself back up. It is. I mean,
I would say that's what he said, but I understood what you just said, so it couldn't have been entirely a quote.
yeah, yeah.
Those
No,
are
honestly,
there.
yeah. It's about how hard you get hit and get back up and still keep fighting. It is. I mean,
It really
it's
is. It's
life.
what you do with it.
Life, yeah. I did. You have no idea where life's going to take you, and how you're
Yeah.
going to deal with it. Certainly,
Well, I'm hoping we will have an exchange. Also, one more thought is that
Easter,
we were
hopefully.
hearing, yeah, there was an Easter discussion of exchange, and Good Friday is today. I always
Yeah.
find it a weird thing to call the day the man was killed Good Friday. Seems bizarre, but
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
who am I? Um, but if we have exchanges, I'll bring that information to you guys. Keep in mind, for those who are still waiting in captivity, that they need your focus to remember that they are languishing in Russian concentration camps,
Absolutely.
and their family members are struggling to get answers and some resolve. So keep that in your consciousness every day, if you don't mind, and focus on this with us. And I'll keep you in the loop. And Shaun, brother, thank you, man.
Thank you, man.
We
We'll
got
keep going as long as people are interested. We get several thousand people download over 3 or 4 platforms between the two of us. So
that's right.
not everybody watches it live on the night. So we got 30 tonight, which is little bit less than normal, but yeah, we can guarantee that we'll get 500-600 people on Substack each download it and watch. So thank you for everybody who comes and watches us every week. Have a good old moan and talk about the week's activities and the week's events. Thanks, Chris.
See you soon. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, everybody. Slava Ukraine.
Героям слава и пиздец Російської Федерації.